Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Greer, thanks for being here, and I enjoyed our conversation in the office last month. Let me begin by saying, as I suspect you know, that I am not a great fan of unfettered free trade. I helped lead the effort when I was in the House against NAFTA and against permanent normal trade relations with China. I will never forget a visit that I made to the Macadillo area in Mexico, where I saw brand new factories and literally Mexican workers living in cardboard boxes. And the result, of course, was the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs, good-paying jobs in this country, transferring them to Mexico where people work for horrendous wages. That is the type of trade policy which I detest. But I want to move to an area to talk about the legal basis of what President Trump has done. President Trump said, Mr. Greer, that he had no choice in terms of Canada, and I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. He had no choice but to bypass Congress and to impose an emergency 25% tariff on Canada to stop, quote, the massive, end quote, amount of fentanyl and, quote, the millions and millions of undocumented immigrants coming from the northern border.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to America First, the channel where we cut through the noise and talk about what really matters, putting America first every single time. If you're tired of the same old biased rhetoric from a mainstream media, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode. All right, let's get into it. Today, we're reacting to a heated exchange between Senator Bernie Sanders and a representative from the Trump administration. Now, as a proud patriot, I'm here to give you the real story, the side you won't hear from Bernie Sanders or his socialist buddies. Because let's face it, folks, this is about more than tariffs. This is about protecting American sovereignty, American jobs, and the safety of our communities. And yet, here comes Bernie doing what he always does, undermining these efforts to score political points.
Unfortunately, that's a lie. The truth is that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection reported just 43 pounds of fentanyl was seized at the Canadian border last year, representing just 0.2% of the total. Now, we could agree that 1 pound of fentanyl is too much. But if 0.2% constitutes an emergency, my guess is illegal drugs are coming in from every country in the world. And that gives the President of the United States incredible power to determine tariffs. Further, he said he talked about millions and millions of undocumented immigrants coming from Canada. In fact, last year there were 24,000 people, not millions and millions. First question, really, we can argue about tariffs, but why does the president have to lie all of the time in order to make his point?
So, Senator, I would just refute that when the president is talking about the nature of the emergency we have. I mean,
could you talk a little bit closer into the mic, please?
Certainly. Senator, I would just say, I think you need to look at what the president issued in terms of the order for the legal basis for what we're doing, right? I mean, the president very rightly hit on this issue of fentanyl migration coming from northern and southern borders, and it's a real emergency.
Drugs are a real emergency. 0.2%. You can then argue illegal drugs come from every country in the world. If you declare that as an emergency, you're giving the President of the United States unbelievable power. Let me go on that point. Let me mention to you what you probably know. 7 Republicans have joined a number of Democrats on legislation reasserting Congress's ability to play an active role in trade and tariffs. That, on the Republican side, was led by Senator Grassley. And he said, and I quote, "For too long, Congress has delegated its clear authority to regulate interstate and foreign commerce to the executive branch, et cetera, et cetera." He wants to reassert Congress's constitutional role and ensure Congress has a voice in trade policy, end of quote. In the last 2 weeks, all we have seen is reports in the newspaper. Congress has not had 1 ounce of authority in determining tariff policy. Do you think Congress should be completely left out of the process? Or does the president have emergency power to do anything he wants with regard to tariffs?
Senator, my staff has had over 200 meetings with congressional offices in the past 2 months to consult. The president's been very transparent about what he wants to do on tariffs. Congress delegated a law to him to take this action.
Mr. Greer, you can have all the meetings you want. You and I had a nice meeting. But at the end of the day, the president did exactly what he wanted to do without any discussion, formal discussion with members of Congress. He could make recommendations to Congress, that's for sure. Do you really think that he has the power under an emergency degree to reorder the trade world, global trade policy, without any input from the United States Congress?
Sir, Congress gave him this law where if he determines a national emergency, he can take appropriate action to regulate imports. That's what he's done.
And you think it's a national emergency that 0.2% of fentanyl coming from Canada constitutes a national emergency?
Sir,
do you?
The president has determined that
do you?
Canada,
I'm asking you. You're
asking me about drug policy. So I agree with the president. If you have China and Canada and Mexico putting drugs into this country at different levels, then that's an emergency. We have to deal with it.
Look, we're not going to argue about the danger of drugs. 0.2, 43 pounds of fentanyl. On that basis, the president can declare an emergency with any country on earth and take unlimited power. That's called authoritarianism. Okay? That's not what a democracy does. Do you have any concerns about all of that power going into the hands of the president?
Sir, Congress delegated this power to the president. He has to renew the emergency every year. He has to give reports to Congress. The Congress told him what he has to do to use this authority, and he's doing those things.
Okay. Thank you.
So first off, let's talk about Bernie Sanders' opening remarks. He goes on this long rant about how he's not a fan of free trade and rails against NAFTA and China. Okay, Bernie, we get it. But let's be honest, this guy has been in government for decades, and he's done little to fix these issues. He's all talk, no action. Meanwhile, President Trump came in and actually did something. He recognized that our trade policies were hollowing out American manufacturing, and he took bold steps to fix it. Did it ruffle some feathers? Sure. But that's what happens when you challenge the globalist elite. Now, the heart of Bernie's argument is that President Trump imposed emergency tariffs on Canada based on what Bernie calls a lie. He says that Trump exaggerated the amount of fentanyl and undocumented immigrants coming from the Canadian border. First of all, let's get something straight. Any fentanyl coming into our country is a crisis. I don't care if it's 43 pounds or 43 grams. This is a deadly drug killing tens of thousands of Americans every year. Bernie wants to downplay it like it's no big deal. But ask yourself this: why should we tolerate any amount of fentanyl crossing our borders? Why should we wait for it to become a bigger problem before we take action? That's not leadership, that's negligence. And let's not forget the bigger picture here. Trump's tariffs weren't just about fentanyl or immigration. They were about protecting American industries, period. For years, countries like Canada, China, and Mexico have been taking advantage of us with unfair trade practices. Trump said, enough is enough, and he used the tools at his disposal to level the playing field. That's called putting America first. Bernie might not like it, but that's because Bernie has always been more interested in globalism than in protecting American workers. Now, Bernie also accuses Trump of lying to justify his actions. This is classic Bernie, throwing around accusations to distract from the real issue. Here's the truth: Trump didn't lie. He recognized a real problem, a flood of illegal drugs coming into our country, and he took action to address it. You can debate the numbers all day long, but the fact remains that fentanyl is coming across our borders, and it's killing Americans. If Bernie were serious about solving this crisis, he'd be supporting Trump's efforts to secure the border instead of nitpicking statistics. Now, Bernie also whines about Congress being left out of the process. Let me ask you this: where was Congress when our manufacturing jobs were disappearing? Where was Congress when China was ripping us off year after year? They were sitting on their hands, doing nothing. That's why Trump had to step in. And yes, he used his emergency powers because it is an emergency. Bernie says this is authoritarianism. Give me a break. What's authoritarian is letting foreign countries dictate our trade policies while Congress does nothing to stop it. Trump didn't seize power. He used the authority Congress already gave him. Don't like it? Then maybe Congress should stop passing laws that hand over power to the executive branch. But don't blame Trump for using the tools he was given. Bernie also brings up some bipartisan legislation led by Senator Grassley that would supposedly reassert Congress's role in trade policy. Look, I respect Senator Grassley, but let's not kid ourselves. This legislation is just another way for the swamp to tie Trump's hands. They don't want him to succeed because he's not playing by their rules. He's playing by our rules, the rules of the American people. And let's be real. Do you trust Congress to handle trade policy? These are the same people who gave us NAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China. They've already proven they can't be trusted. At the end of the day, this isn't about Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump. It's about the future of our country. Do we want to keep letting foreign countries take advantage of us, or do we want to fight back? Trump chose to fight back, and I stand with him 100%. Bernie can complain all he wants, but the fact is, Trump's tariffs are working. They're bringing jobs back to America, they're protecting our industries, and they're sending a message to the world. The days of ripping off the United States are over. So, what do you think, patriots? Do you stand with President Trump's America First trade policies? Or do you think Congress needs to step in and take over? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're at it, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to America First for more hard-hitting, no-nonsense commentary. Together, we're making America great again, one video at a time. Until next time, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.